Hi, good afternoon. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, I wanted to simplify the grand solar minimum and the magnetic pole reversal so everyone's got, a reasonable understanding of what these things lead to. So I've created this little flow chart. Hopefully it will help, you get to grips with some of the things that are going on with our Earth and what is really causing, global climate changes. So before we get into it, a really big thanks to those few people, and it is really just a few people that are coming forward that are enabling us just to keep our head above water. We really need a few more people to step forward because our funding has dramatically dropped. We lost some big supporters last year who have been affected in industries such as the aviation industry, and that money has been greatly missed. It has slowed down a lot of things like the production of magnetometers and muon detectors and so on and so forth. So, if we could just encourage a few more people to come forward and, help support the observatory, perhaps we can get this train back on the rail and keep it going. So, okay, we've all heard the term grand solar minimum. Usually associated with low sunspot numbers or low solar activity, and we've all heard the term magnetic pole reversal. The reason why the magnetic pole is relevant is because it's a rare event that last took place, the completed reversal, 780,000 years ago. The grand solar minimum is a recent thing really in terms of years, because over the last 33 years or so, give or take a couple, we have seen a decline in solar activity over the last 3 solar cycles. Now, both of these things lead to the same thing, which we'll get to. So, grand solar minimum leads to a weakened heliosphere. This is a bubble that protects our solar system. And during low solar output and low sunspot numbers, the heliosphere shrinks back in over the solar system, which in turn allows more cosmic rays to come in through intergalactic bodies. So they're coming from outer space, deep outer space, or just for argument's sake, out of our solar system. And then on top of this, we have the magnetic pole reversal, which leads to a weakened magnetosphere, which in turn, both the grand solar minimum and the magnetic pole reversal lead to an increase in cosmic rays in Earth's upper atmosphere. Cosmic rays mix with upper atmospheric particles that allows water vapour to condense on, forming water droplets, and the water droplets enter the jet stream, increasing the mass and the velocity of the jet stream, in turn changing the behaviour, i.e. for one, that affects and creates polar jet streams to mix with subtropical jet streams, and this leads to abnormal jet streams, and those change global climate. In short, that is basically what people are talking about with grand solar minimum and the magnetic pole reversal. Those are the causes and also the effects. We know what abnormal jet stream changes on global climate lead to. When you have unpredictable growing seasons, it can lead to crop failure for a number of reasons. You can have an extended winter, which lead to the farmer putting the crops in the ground, expecting the season to begin as normal, and then there is an extra 2 weeks or 3 weeks of Arctic climate, which destroys the crops getting off to a start. On the other hand, you can have floods which damage the crops at any particular growing part of that cycle. So, both these things are leading to climate change, and in turn, we are seeing the effects of these changes, not just on crops, but also displacement of people and their homes and their habitats. And, by no means are we at an equilibrium point yet where things have got to their worst point. We're expecting around the next 2 years for us to start entering the worst time periods. Now, this has been slowly happening over 30 odd years. A couple of other things that have been happening over 30 years is the magnetic North Pole has been migrating faster. So from the 1900s to 1990, just to put it into perspective, the poles over the northern hemisphere migrated 500 miles, but from 1990 to 2020 they'd migrated 1,000 miles. So they are covering, the magnetic north pole, or the dipole, is covering more distance in a shorter space of time. So we are predicting that we are arriving at a crescendo point where things are going to dramatically change. We could be leaving the strong field lines, which create a scenario where the pole, the magnetic north pole, slowly migrates because it's in the strong field lines, and then when it enters the weak field lines, it spontaneously increases in speed and goes through its full reversal. If that is the case, we can expect, as this started, 30 years for things to start really picking up, for that to be the case at the end of the reversal. So what I'm saying is it could take another 30 years before the climate starts to improve, and then perhaps another 90 years for the magnetic north pole to actually settle down into its permanent position. That is, of course, if it's a completed reversal. Now, as I mentioned in a video just a couple of days ago, there's a misconception going around that Maunder minimums, when we arrive in periods for, say, 50, 60 years of low solar activity, that they set up the circumstances to create temperature changes on our planet. As we can see here, somebody has fitted in at the bottom of Maunder minimum the little ice age, but the little ice age began some 50, 100 years before that. So, you know, don't be confused with low solar activity driving climate on this Earth. What low solar activity does do is allow more cosmic radiation in through the heliosphere and in turn into our upper atmosphere. Just to back that up with a bit of evidence for you, you can see there's 2,000 years of temperature history. We can see the little ice age begins around 1,400 and lasts till around 1,800, but the Maunder minimum took place around the 1600s to the 1660s or thereabouts. So, you know, we're 150 years into the ice age before sunspots came down, so clearly indicating that sunspots dropping were not responsible for driving down temperatures on Earth, because temperatures had already began to drop before sunspot numbers had. So, you know, when you see these things being pushed around the internet and they're saying that global cooling or global warming, or, you know, these cycles that are occurring are a result of the grand solar minimum and they are responsible for changing global climate, it's simply not the case. Solar activity with regards to low solar output does not drive the climate on this planet. And just to rebut with a little bit of evidence as to what really does happen during grand solar minimums, we can clearly see on this space environment overview that when sunspots are reduced in numbers, that cosmic rays are increased, and even to the point now where we're at solar cycle 24, the current cycle, or we should be coming into the cycle minima, beginning of the cycle 25, we can see that during solar cycle 24 at the maximum, it still wasn't enough, like the previous solar cycles, enough power being emitted from the sun to push out cosmic rays, as we can see. So solar minimas, one of the things that they mainly create is a situation where we get more cosmic rays. And, you know, the flow chart I showed you earlier, as a result of that, what happens is they enter the upper atmosphere, cause a seeding effect, which allows condensation. That water vapour ends up in our jet streams, making them super jet streams, as we've demonstrated over the last few days. On Null Skull, we can see clearly what is going on with our jet streams and how they're malfunctioning and how they're abnormal. You know, I've showed you over the last few days also where these jet streams should be over the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, i.e. 30 degrees your subtropical, 60 degrees north your polar, and vice versa on the southern hemisphere. So, you know, we are narrowing things down here at the observatory as to the causes and the effects of what is changing climate on this planet. It may not be what is being put out there in mainstream media, because what they are pushing is CO2 being a greenhouse gas, and a greenhouse gas causes global warming and in turn changes the climate. And we know that that is not the case, because there is no way mankind could ever put up enough CO2 into the atmosphere where such an effect would take place. You know, they completely omit one of the major greenhouse gases, which is water, and that's got to be for a reason. It's also got to be for a reason why they are blaming CO2 for, you know, greenhouse gases, in turn climate change, etc. But I'll just say this: if we do what some of these organisations and groups want, if we reduce the CO2, we will not make this earth any greener. And that means we will reduce the biodiversity habitats for all creatures on this planet, and that could lead to detriment consequences to humans on the planet. And they surely must be aware of this. It's just that, you know, the majority of people, first of all, don't have the equipment like we do at the observatory to measure parts per million CO2, don't have the equipment to measure oxygen in the atmosphere, don't have trimags, don't have magnetometers around the world, and don't have muon detectors around the world to really reveal the truth. And, you know, when they are being told something on mainstream media, they're inclined to believe it because they don't have any other alternative information in relationship to that. So I'm going to leave it here, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, and hopefully we've encouraged a few of you to step forward and support what we do, because what we want to do at this observatory is firstly inform people of the truth, and secondly, you know, give them a heads up as to what is happening, and thirdly, hopefully, you know, be able to make some predictions and forecasts as to what to expect in the future. So with that, I'll mention the link down there in the description, and you can become one of our patrons, or you can go onto the website and there's a link there as well. It's entirely up to you, but the main thing is support what we do. There are worse things than supporting observatories in this day and age, trust me. Guys, with that, I'll just wish you and your families all the best, and say what I usually do. Bye for now.